Cuba has pristine rainforests and beaches, and the largest wetland in the Caribbean region. It is home to a variety of wild animals, cute sea turtles, and ferocious crocodiles. Despite all the dangers, tourists still flock to the crocodile-infested swamps to watch the unique scenery here. And then they get lost and can't find their way back. Survival experts, Grady and Bill, will play the role of lost birdwatchers. Beneath their feet are corals and silt, making walking extremely difficult. At this moment, Bill sees something glittering ahead. It turns out to be a wild little backpack. Inside, there's a pair of binoculars, a notebook, a pencil sharpener, and a pencil. Heading north is the inland area. They start to set off across the swamp. They need to be aware that there may be lurking crocodiles underwater, especially when wearing slippers. Grady doesn't understand Bill's outfit at all. At this moment, Bill suddenly stops in his tracks. He senses a murderous aura. Lying in the grass is a crocodile, exuding a dark and ominous presence. When hunting, crocodiles use the sensory organs on their skin to detect the movement and vibrations of prey in the water. So the two must move slowly and stay calm, gradually moving away from the crocodile. At the same time, they are reminded to make spears for self-defense. Grady cuts down a tree and quickly makes a simple spear. With a weapon in hand, he feels much bolder. He prepares to make one for Bill too. A crocodile stares blankly at them, never having seen such creatures as humans before and not knowing if they're edible. So the crocodile makes a move. Bill urgently calls out to Grady. At this moment, the crocodile suddenly dives into the water. Bill is petrified with fear. Only ripples can be seen on the water's surface. The crocodile performs a dragon-like tail flick in the water, declaring its sovereignty. Grady, however, calmly finishes making the spear. Bill urges him to retreat quickly, saying there's more than one crocodile here. As they move forward, they see wild pineapples. Pineapples can store rainwater, which carries the fragrance of plants, refreshing and sweet, being one of the few good things in the swamp. The two take a big drink, and then casually toss them aside, continuing on their way. They walk slowly, because they might step on a crocodile, so they must remain highly alert. But an accident still happens. Grady loses his footing and falls into a pit. Fortunately, he grabs onto a tree trunk and doesn't sink in. With Bill's help, he finally climbs out. They need to be even more cautious from now on. Ahead, a piece of land appears. The two prepare to spend the night here. Bill is in charge of building the shelter, and Grady is in charge of starting a fire. He needs to collect some tinder. He finds dry fibers on a palm tree. Bill inserts some tree trunks between several trees to build an elevated platform. He uses tree bark as ropes to tie the trunks together. All that's needed is to weave in some palm leaves, and a perfect roof will be born. But for now, he's going to lay these branches on the ground to make a bed first. Grady takes out the binoculars, removes the lenses, and prepares to use sunlight, focusing to start a fire. But bad news arrives first. The sky suddenly starts to rain heavily, instantly extinguishing all hope. Grady has to stuff the tinder into the binocular case, hoping to keep it dry. Bill can only brave the rain to build the roof. Just as he finishes, the sun comes out. Grady gets another chance to start a fire with a lens. Soon, the tinder starts to smoke. Just as it's about to succeed, the sun is obscured by dark clouds. It's really a case of failing at the last moment. They can only wait for the sun to come out again. Grady seizes the opportunity and successfully starts a fire. When he returns to the campsite, Bill's shelter is almost finished. They continue to cross the swamp and soon see an exit. Ahead is grassland, which means they're approaching land. Sure enough, a dense forest awaits them. And as soon as they enter the forest, they see a pool of water. Grady climbs down and takes a sip. The water is salty and undrinkable. Disappointed, he prepares to climb back up. But Bill points behind him. It turns out there's a sea turtle swimming in the water. It's better late than never. Grady takes a beautiful leap and dives into the water, splashing up a spray of water. When he floats back up, he's holding a sea turtle in his right hand. Bill throws the backpack to him, and Grady finally climbs up. They continue heading north. After walking for a while, a river appeared ahead, and there was natural mountain spring water here. Bill took a sip and confirmed it was fresh water, pure and sweet. Grady hurriedly drank some too. When he looked up, he saw an unexpected scene. In the reeds not far away, a boat was hidden there conspicuously. The two went over to check it out. The hull was already in a dilapidated state, with a large crack at the bow. The rain was getting heavier and heavier, and there was even a crocodile keeping them company in the rain. The two painstakingly dragged the boat ashore, and then used it as a temporary shelter. The two huddled inside to take shelter from the rain. The heavy rain soon passed. Grady found a good spot. He leaned some tree trunks against the rocks, and covered them with palm leaves, and a shelter was completed. Bill came to the riverside, and cleaned the sea turtle. When he returned, Grady had already started a fire. Next came the charcoal grilled delicacy. It didn't take long, and the grilled meat was ready to eat. Grady skillfully used chopsticks. The two well replenished their energy. Next came the repair of the boat. He took out the notebook from the backpack, which had metal wires in it. Grady straightened the wire, then inserted a wooden stick into the hole at the bow of the boat, and wound the wire back and forth around it. After doing all this, they pushed the boat back into the river. Grady sat on it, and felt quite stable. So the two officially set sail. They went downstream, and the scenery along the bank was very beautiful. After a while, they entered a tributary. It was like an underground palace here. The two could only go with the flow. At this moment, they saw a truck on the bank. They were finally rescued. Maine is located in the northeast corner of the United States. Wild animals such as black bears, bobcats, and moose roam the rugged and sparsely populated land. In the quiet primeval forest, there are densely distributed peat bogs. Survival experts Grady and Bill will take on the challenge here. They stumbled along in the swamp and picked up a wild little backpack. They came to a dry spot, opened the backpack, and inside there was a large rain poncho, a roll of warning tape, a survival bracelet, a wire saw, and a red bag. They started heading east, because that was where the sea was. But the weather was not on their side. It started to rain heavily, and the temperature dropped sharply, and soon it turned from rain to snow. They shivered and entered the forest. Now they were completely soaked, and could only generate heat by walking. But the ground was very slippery, which inadvertently added a lot of risks. And bad news kept coming. The cold weather caused heavy snowfall. Goose feather-like snowflakes soon dotted this forest, making it look like a kingdom of snow. But the two men had no heart to appreciate this beautiful scenery. They just wanted to find a suitable shelter as soon as possible. But that was easier said than done. After all, the surrounding scenery was all the same. The two kept moving forward, until the snow stopped. They also found a suitable place. There was a naturally leaning tree here, and beneath it was dry land. The two started looking for materials. Bill saw a dead tree, peeled off its bark, and took it away, preparing to lay it on the ground to set up a thick mattress. Grady collected some pine branches, tied them up with the bag, and carried them back to the campsite. Then he laid the pine branches on top of the bark. After Grady's repeated carrying, the branch mattress was quite thick. Next came the construction of the roof. First, collect several tree trunks, then place them diagonally above the mattress, and then spread the large rain poncho on top. Use tape to tie it up, so that it wouldn't be blown away by the wind in the middle of the night. Finally, spread the pine branches on the very top. The shelter was finally completed. The two crawled inside. In the middle of the night, they were so cold that they could only keep warm by moving around, spending the most unforgettable night of their lives. The two continued heading east. They were already in a state of dehydration, with severely depleted physical strength. And this forest was so desolate. Bill couldn't care less anymore. He grabbed a usnea lichen and started sucking on it. He felt like a deer, greedily absorbing the moisture. Grady couldn't stand it either. He grabbed the moss on the ground and sucked the moisture inside. It carried the fragrance of plants. The two were satisfied, and then continued on their way. The terrain started to get lower, and to their surprise, the sea appeared ahead. But getting straight down was as difficult as ascending to heaven. It was a 60-meter-high cliff. The two made a detour, following a path to the shore. This was a beach covered with strange rocks, with waves beating relentlessly. Seeing this scene, Bill couldn't help but get inspired to compose a poem. With Grady having a strange look on his face, Bill, communicated with the sea. The two began to search for supplies along the shore. Grady picked up a buoy, which could serve as a water container. He continued to explore, while Bill stopped to make a container. He used a knife to carve out an entrance on it. These pieces of garbage lying on the beach were practical supplies in Grady's eyes. Only by being good at collecting items could one live a comfortable life in the wild. Bill saw a pool formed after the tide receded. He poked it with a stick, and two furry things popped out. These were sea urchins with many spines. Bill put on gloves and easily caught them. Sea urchins are rich in protein and vitamins, and are an excellent source of calories. Grady saw that the container was already filled with rich seafood, such as kelp, sea urchins, and conchs. The two excitedly gave each other a fist bump. Although they really wanted to continue their cleanup, the tide was rising soon, and night was approaching. Building a shelter was imperative. They climbed back up the cliff and entered the woods. Bill punched and kicked the trees, preparing to use them to build a frame. Grady collected branches and dry grass to make a soft bed. After collecting the materials, the two started working in earnest. They first tied two thick tree trunks together with a bag as the basic frame, then added a third tree trunk to make a tripod. Then they added some more wood on this basis to form a sturdy frame. Grady continued to improve the shelter. He laid the branches on top to achieve the effect of blocking the wind and rain. The interior was also paved with some dry grass and branches. Bill was in charge of starting a fire. This birch tree was the best material for making the crossbar of a bow drill. Bill cut a long piece of it. He also broke off a section of a tree root on the ground and split it evenly in half from the middle, then used it as a rope to tie the crossbar of the bow drill. A sturdy and easy-to-use crossbar could withstand the downward pressure. The gap in the middle was just right for sliding the drill spindle. The drill spindle must be straight and sturdy. Grady prepared to make a distress signal, a torch that could be lit when a ship passed by. The key element of this torch was tree sap. There were small blisters on this tree. Poking them would cause a lot of tree sap to flow out. When exposed to an open flame, it would burn like a candle. He went to the seaside and prepared to set up 3 torches. Adding some plastic ropes to the licorice would make the flame burn rapidly, attracting the attention of ships. Bill stacked several layers of bark together to balance the bow drill. He also untied the rope from the survival bracelet. With these materials ready, he began to assemble the parts. Just then, Grady came back carrying wood. The two officially started. The bow drill rotated very smoothly. Bill gradually increased the speed. Smoke started to come out from the joint. This was a good sign. Bill seized the moment and started to operate frantically. Puffs of thick smoke followed one after another. It was rotating too fast. A piece of bark was flung out and happened to hit Grady in the eye. However, this hard work paid off. Embers were produced at the joint. He put them into the fire cage and finally succeeded in starting a fire. Next, they could prepare dinner. Bill cut open the sea urchins and chose to eat them raw. The taste was quite delicious. They ate sea urchins while grilling kelp and steaming conchs. The next day was sunny. Grady was looking for seafood. At this moment, he saw a buoy and an antenna in the distance, indicating the presence of civilization. The two started to set off. After walking for a while, they saw houses. They were finally rescued.